Good morning vlog. In today's video, I'm going to take you with me for a week in the life of a wildlife ecology student. So this week I have a field intensive class where I'm going to be learning a ton about wildlife techniques, and I wanted to show y'all what that looked like. So it's currently 6 in the morning, but now it's time to drive to the biological station and start the first day. So I opted to stay in the house on the property while others camped, and lucky me, got a room all to myself. But not long after, it was time to start the activities for the day. We started by learning how to do VHF tracking. So we were trying to find these collars that they hit around, and it took a second to adjust to hearing the differences in the beeps, but eventually we got the hang of it and we found the tags. We also got to use like a FLIR to detect the fawn amongst the bushes. But moving on to the next deer-related technique, we learned how to dart them, as when you're wanting to tag them, one way to capture them is by darting them. So we all got the chance to take 2 shots at the fake deer here. So we'd aim for like the shoulder area, and here are the shots I took. Not too bad. But then it was time to move on to the next location, and if you couldn't tell, we do this by just piling up in the back of the trucks. It's kind of fun, not gonna lie. Now we're gonna be learning about plants, but first look at this view. It's so pretty. Anyways, we're learning how to calculate cover using this plot. Oh, and here's this wolf spider I found when I was rolling around some logs. And on our way back for lunch, we found an eastern diamondback rattlesnake. This is one of the species I was really hoping to see on this trip, and I can't believe it happened on the first day. It's absolutely crazy how well they blended. Of course, as wildlife people, we had to get a closer look, which I don't advise, but we had professionals with us, so we're fine. This dude just curled up by the tree, and we all just stared at it. It was looking like right at me, so I was able to get some good photos on my camera. And yeah, so here he is up close, and these guys are Florida's and North America's largest venomous snake. They're typically 3 to 6 feet long, but they can get all the way up to 8 feet, and they have keeled scales, so as you can see, it's like this ridge in the middle of each of their scales. They're ambush predators, so they kind of sit and wait for the prey, and they use their thermal pits to locate warm-blooded animals. They're unfortunately in decline throughout their range due to various threats such as habitat loss, road mortality, and overexploitation. And they rely on prescribed fires as they live in longleaf pine savannas. But after lunch, it was time to set up our camera traps. We set up our trap by the water as we use sardines for bait. We're hoping to get some cool stuff, maybe like otters, gators, who knows. But stay tuned for the end to see if we got anything at all. Oh my gosh, and here I am being awkward because I just peed in the woods. But while I was tinkling, the rest of the group was setting up our drift fence. Basically what this is targeting like amphibians and reptiles. So when these guys hopefully run into this black fence and then fall into like the bucket or into the minnow traps. Oh, and in that same area, there's a beehive in this tree. Alright, so it's the next morning, and here I am walking through the woods in the dark as it was 5 a.m. Why are we up so early, you may ask? Well, we're on the hunt for some Chuck Will's widows. I think these guys are so funny looking, so I sacrificed my sleep by waking up at 4:30 to hopefully see one. So what does a Chuck Will's widow look like? It looks like this. So what does looking for Chuck Will's widow look like? Well, it was mostly just standing around listening to them calling and hoping they'd fly into one of the mist nets. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Instead, they just taunted us by flying all around the nets and even landing on one of the poles. But I guess no one wanted to be caught. So was it worth it? I guess. It was a nice view. I watched the sunrise and I got a video of one flying over. And I also got to hear their calls. But yeah. But once the sun rose, we got to checking even more mist nets for, your typical morning birds. We caught a few, like this Carolina red, blue-gray gnatcatcher, tufted titmouse, and white-eyed vireo. And actually, here's the mist net with the titmouse inside. Okay, time for a new technique, rocket nets. So basically, it's a net connected to some rockets. It gets fired on top of the animal you're trying to capture, and here's what it looked like. Then it was time to go back to radio tracking or triangulation. Basically just some more walking around listening to beeps to find the tag. Back to the trucks we go, on our way to check the drift fence once again to see if we caught anyone, and not much luck, to no surprise. But we did get this 6-line race runner. So basically, after identifying what it is, we had to take some measurements. So we learned how to properly measure SVL, or snout vent length. So basically go from the snout to, And there's other measurements we can take, like tail length or total length, but yeah. And don't worry, it might look like it's an awkward position, but it's totally fine. And when we were leaving the drift fence, we came across this baby gopher tortoise. It was so cute. I've never seen a baby in the wild before, and it's so cool to know, like, even though they're endangered, there's still a new generation out there. And then driving back to lunch, we came across not one, but 2 eastern rat snakes, also known as yellow rat snakes, because they're yellow, if you can see. Since these guys aren't venomous, of course, we had to pick them up. But don't worry, we're not picking them up for funsies. We're using them to teach us how to properly hold and handle snakes. Their coloration varies, but they're typically this yellow color, and they have these 4 dark stripes going down the length of them. And they're found in numerous habitats like pinelands, hardwood hammocks, marshes, and prairies. They are constrictors, so they will constrict larger prey with coils of their body, but they can also swallow smaller prey alive. And these guys are really good at climbing, so they can be found both on the ground and in the trees. And they use their weakly keeled scales and their muscles to essentially grip onto the trees, and they can even climb like brick walls. So I got to hold both of these guys, which is very exciting because I'm not sure if I've held this species before, I don't think. But I always love holding snakes. And it's just so cool watching how they're able to climb the trees despite having like no hands or feet. Kind of crazy. The snake sightings didn't stop there, as that night we went herping, which is basically looking for herps, or reptiles, amphibians, not to be confused with herpes. We were not looking for herpes. But basically, we just set out in our little groups around the lake looking for whatever we could find. I'm not going to lie, I was a little nervous because it's pitch black out. You're walking through some tall grass you can't really see through. And the area is known for some like venomous species like pygmy rattlesnakes. Anyways, first guy we found was this leopard frog.
Beautiful.
Oh, I think that is coral.
Coral!
Yeah, it's most definitely a coral snake. And next thing we found was this coral snake, which we will learn later that they look a lot like some other species, like the scarlet and scarlet king snake, which fatal mistake if you get them wrong. But I was able to quickly identify this one as it had like the black face, and also the yellow, red, and red touching. There's a lot of mnemonics, but like they could be really confusing, and like people will mix them up, which not good. So I mean, I typically look for the black face, but also just like don't touch them. Be safe. We followed this guy around a little bit so we didn't lose him, and so we could catch him to learn about him and learn about how to handle venomous snakes, which you shouldn't do, by the way. Anyways, here he is in the bucket. Pretty cool. It's the first wild one I've ever seen, probably the closest I've ever been to one. And we'll talk about this guy a little later, but first, here's a banded water snake in the meantime. So it got too buggy and scary for me, so I headed back to the trucks where we had some sheets set up for insects. Before that, here are some of the many spiders that had webs on the tall grass that we had to try not to walk into. I would say that probably a few were walked into. They were everywhere. But I mean, spiders are cool, right? Mm-hmm. So here's the sheet, and this is not an insect, but a cricket frog instead. So this moth is a orange panopoda moth. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And here's the rest of the sheet. And this one is a skiff moth that did not want to cooperate, but looked really cool. All right, so next snake of the night was a garter snake. So common garter snakes are these slender snakes with 3 stripes running down their body, but like not all of them might have them. And they can be found in various habitats, and especially by freshwater, like we did this one. Here I am holding this dude. He was pretty chill with me. It was also cool watching him like breathe. I don't know. Cool. And this snake is a scarlet snake. So one of the snakes that can be confused with a coral snake.
Looking at the shadow going in.
Oh my lord. So we picked the right size tube so that he's not able to turn around in it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so you're kind of playing a game of tug of war where they are going forward, and you try and pull him back a little bit. Oh, he's really pulling. I might even have to redo it. Okay, no, because sometimes they'll kind of when they relax a little bit, then you can pull them back. But otherwise, he's really going.
He's like, no.
He's got a one-way ticket out of this tube.
Get your iNet photos now.
Yeah, you gotta let them. Once they relax is when you have to pull back, because otherwise you'll start, like, you can feel their vertebrae start kind of like popping apart. So you just have to be really, really gentle. And kind of, you know, and just kind of work with them on it. But yeah, he's. Do we want to hold them side by side?
Yeah.
I was like, he's gone.
What kind of like measurements and?
So that, oh my god, that is actually total coral food. SVL, so snout vent length. Which is the length from the tip of the nose to the cloaca.
Put them in this end.
And then you can get total length by just measuring also the tail.
The smart money is on the.
It's the closest he'll ever be.
Yes.
Surviving.
If this was a different, I'm not really swabbing coral snakes, but
So a big difference between these two is that the bands on the coral snake go all the way around the body, while they don't for the scarlet snake, so you can see its underside is unmarked. Okay, back to the insects. Here is a horsefly. I think it's funny how big their eyes are, and I sometimes forget that they have like a mean bite.
This is Atuchus lecontii.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for visiting.
Okay, new day, new snake. We got another eastern diamondback rattlesnake hiding in the bushes. Honestly, it took me a minute to see him, and easy to understand how someone almost stepped on him. Anyways, we were out here competing against a detection dog, trying to find some skunk scat.
Which one was this?
And well, let's just say we didn't do too well. Out of the 21 people in our group, we only found one of the 4 scats. This here is Cowboy, the detection dog, who works on sniffing out the Everglades mink, spotted skunks, and another species I forgot. But this was our competition. Let's just say Cowboy crushed it. He wasted no time searching everywhere. So basically, what detection dogs do is sniff out the specific scent they are trained on. And so when they're out in the field, it's their job to detect that scent pretty much. And when they find the source, they give some kind of cue to the handler. In this case, when Cowboy finds the scat, he sits down. In order to reinforce his behavior after he correctly finds the source, he's awarded playtime with his toy.
Quite on it, and in this case, I know where it is, so I want him to be as close to it as possible. But in the field, we would just search around and
So detection dogs are really cool, as their sense of smell is 1,000 times better than ours, and he found all the scats in about 11 minutes. However, their effectiveness varies with the weather and temperature, especially in Florida. Cowboy can only work during the cooler months because it's just way too hot in the summer. So really, this is the tail end of his working period as we're nearing summer. It's also why we did this in the morning. And to tell you a little bit more about detection dogs like Cowboy, they have to be really focused and reward driven. Don't worry, after he finished working, he got some good pets from each of us. I don't think he wanted it to stop because he kept putting his paw on me to keep petting him. And back into the trucks we go, on to our next adventure. But first, here is a prescribed burn we passed. Very cool to see the beginning of it, and don't worry, you'll see the progression. But we were on our way to check the drift fence once again. Not too much, but we did find this gopher frog, which we took some measurements of and then put it next to a gopher tortoise burrow. This particular species of gopher frog is near threatened, but it's not yet federally listed. So these guys shelter primarily in gopher tortoise burrows, hence the name. Not far from the fence, we found a North American racer, which I got to hold as well. And then we released it into another gopher tortoise burrow, as a lot of other species utilize these burrows, and it's not just the gopher tortoises. Okay, here's an interesting sight. So this is a soft-shell turtle who I guess is laying eggs, but it's kind of weird because she's completely in the dirt, and it looked like she messed up another turtle's nest. I don't know. Oh, and see progression. This wasn't long after, and there was more fire and smoke. And don't worry, the fire isn't bad. These habitats depend on it. Deer. If you couldn't tell, our schedule was packed. But during the breaks we would play a bunch of card games, which was super fun. Then it was time to set up some aquatic traps. I was a little wimp, and I did not want to get in the water as I did not have a change of pants, and I did not want to get my shoes wet. Plus, they're biting bugs, and like I'm a magnet for them anyways, so like, no thanks. So instead, I watched from the shore, helping direct where to put the traps and recording all the data. We had 4 different transects and 1 control. So each transect had 1 short and 1 tall crayfish trap, a minnow trap, and a hoop net. But our group went above and beyond and set up an additional minnow trap. Here's some clips of the traps being set up and my classmates just having fun in the muddy water. Oh yeah, and the traps were baited with sardines. Yummy. But then it was time to set up some little Sherman traps to hopefully catch some rats and mice. Here's what that looked like. Basically a metal box that can be folded. This is where I put my trap as it had some little holes and it was by some fallen trees, you know. Great spot. And that night was probably one of the coolest. We got to trap bats. And so we did this a few different ways. The first way is by using a harp net. And so we set it up by the entrance of the roost, which is like this bunker. And what happens is when the bats fly out of the roost, they fly through this trap that has 3 layers of like clear strings. And in trying to like avoid the first layer, they fly into the next one, causing them to fall into this basket. It was just crazy to see how effective this method was. Like, they were dropping in like crazy. Once we got a lot in the trap, we moved it away so we could sample them. So the trained professionals took 10 out and put them in bags to take measurements. The bags just like help keep them calm and everything. The rest, they just got sexed and then released. Majority of them were females, as this was like a nesting roost, so it was mainly just like pregnant females and such. And here they are taking certain measurements of the bats. So some of the measurements we took were the age, sex, reproductive status, mass, forearm length, and wing condition. Also, these guys are southeastern Myotis bats, and so these guys typically weigh between 5 to 8 grams, or like a couple pennies. They're insectivores, so they eat insects like midges, mosquitoes, beetles, a bunch of pests. The way they catch their prey is called hawking, so they catch them in flight. And like most bats, they use echolocation to find their prey. So the females will form large maternity colonies where they will give birth in late April to mid-May, like we see here, while the males typically form their own little small bachelor colonies if they're not already roosting alone. The pups can't fly initially, but they do learn within 6 weeks. And some threats these guys face include roost loss, deforestation, and the possibility of white nose syndrome. Okay, and this is the next method we use to catch the bats, and it's like very similar to capturing birds. So we just use mist nets. So like the birds, the bats don't see the mist net, and so they fly into the net and fall into the little pocket, and then they just wait to be untangled. And don't get me wrong, they look super uncomfy, like being stuck here. But I guess they're fine, and they're taken out carefully to make sure they're safe. Nobody got hurt. And it was so cool seeing them, like, so up close. Because typically they're, like, flying far above, or they're just way too fast to see. So it's just really cool to see them so up close. And it'd be cool to hold them, but, like, they do carry rabies, so it's not the safest to handle. And, like, everybody handling them was trained, and they had the rabies vaccine. So they're fine. Since bats are so small, they're a little harder to mark because, like, there's this rule that, like, any mark or tag has to be less than 5% of the animal's body weight. And so, you know, bats are tiny, which means they need a tiny tag. That's not saying they don't have, like, tiny tags for them. They do. But another way to mark them, which we saw, is by taking a hole from their wing, like they're doing here. And it doesn't impact them, and it eventually heals over. But it's just a simple way to mark them and also get a sample of their DNA.
2 millimeters?
So as we were leaving, we got to see a barred owl, which I guess always hangs out around this area. Oh, and here is a little bark scorpion glowing in the black light, which if you didn't know, scorpions can do that. Also, it's just slightly mind-boggling to me that we have scorpions in Florida, because why did I have no idea? Okay, next morning, we went and checked the traps once again, starting with the mammal traps, and well, we kind of caught one, but sadly did not make it, and I guess that's just the reality of this field. So, on a different note, we went back to the drift fence, and we found some wolf spiders, and the scorpion, and we got some dung beetles, but that was it. And back in the truck we go to check on our aquatic traps, and we are joined by the zebra swallowtail butterfly. Here we are getting our aquatic traps out of the water, and well, our transect was a big success. You're welcome. No, it's not me. But here are two massive greater sirens we caught in our minnow trap. They're like one of the weirdest and coolest species I've ever seen. And here is a Florida mud turtle that was in our hoop net, which I have no idea how this guy stayed in there because like this trap targets the much bigger turtles, like sliders, but I guess here he is. So we got the two greater sirens set up here in this bucket, and let me tell you a little bit more about them because I feel like this is one of those species that you don't even know exists. So sirens are these long aquatic salamanders with these bushy gills, small front limbs, and they don't have any back limbs. And they're like this olive to light gray color with like snake or eel-like bodies. They have tiny little eyes, making their eyesight not particularly the best. They can grow up to 3 feet long, and they can be confused with amphibians. But the main difference is that amphibians have a round tail, they don't have these external gills, and they have 4 reduced limbs. So sirens live in ponds, lakes, and weedy ditches, especially those that are heavily vegetated and have a thick layer of mud. They can go dormant for years at a time so they can survive during drought and seasonal wetlands. Their fossils have only been found in a few counties in Florida, but living individuals have been found from southern Maryland to Alabama, including Florida, obviously. They're of least concern at the moment, but there's still quite a bit about these guys that aren't quite known.
Sirens that wants to see a siren or touch a siren, be one with the siren.
Yeah, let him be. There's more.
Oh, and a lot of the traps here had these like crawfish, but they weren't what we were targeting, so here I am just releasing them back into the water. He's trying to pinch me. It just does nothing.
Does anyone have a knife on them?
It's like... So this is a pygmy sunfish. Here is a little leech we found on the ground. I don't know what exact species this is of leech, but it is yucky. Oh, and another crawfish. Crawfish, crayfish. Got my finger.
Which sunfish was the other one? Pygmy sunfish? Pygmy sunfish.
Alsoma.
And then a nice male.
They're super cool when they're all colored up. We'll leave one for measuring fish.
And now for another way to catch aquatic species besides these traps is by electro-fishing. So basically this backpack sends a current down this rod and it shocks the fish in that area and like stuns them so they float to the top. And the other two people here are catching them in a net. And don't worry, the current isn't strong enough to kill them. It just stuns them, and they're all wearing waders so that they don't get shocked. This is the only thing they caught, which was a warmouth. And now that electro-fishing is over, it's time to release the greater sirens back into the water.
You gotta get towards the water, buddy.
Oh wow.
He's so evolved.
Oh, he drank it.
All right, nap time.
Bye bye.
Bye, have a nice time.
Uh-huh.
Over on the other side of the lake.
It was definitely distracting.
Yeah. He's moving. He's like, I can't get into the sand.
He was.
Are they like kind of blind? No?
They don't have great eyesight, but they're not like blind.
He's looking for a place to basically nuzzle in.
Tap.
I did it. I got there.
No one sees me.
Yeah.
Well, I can't see you.
His head is
You
under
can't
there,
see me.
so.
And you can see how quickly these guys just disappear, right? Well, kind of.
So on our way back for lunch, we saw this soft-shell turtle on the road who we assumed was going up to lay some eggs probably, as we were pretty far from the water. So we just moved her off the road so she wouldn't get hit. I may have given her a little pet, but also if you see here, she has leeches. Ew. Okay, but so I guess turtles have chlamydia, so like wash your hands after touching them. Just an FYI. Now onto some frog tubes. Basically, there's these PVC pipes set out for frogs to take refuge in during the heat. So we're just checking these today, getting them out of the tubes to see what species they are, and then taking some measurements. This is what that process looks like. I know, a little crazy, but like they're fine. Here's who I got in my tube, a little pine woods tree frog. You could tell because of the little yellow speckling on the back legs, and back it goes into the tube. A little chair spinning intermission while we wait to go on to the next activity, which was gopher tortoise burrow scoping. So basically, we went along a transect, which we did not maintain, looking for these burrows, and when we'd find one, we'd send a scope down looking for gopher tortoises, or honestly, whatever else was in there. And this is what it looked like. So it was a lot of twisting and pushing the scope down this long tunnel and watching the screen for any tortoise sightings, which burrows could be super long, like I think 40 feet long at times, and they're not like the most perfect thing. There's like roots sticking out too. I was lucky. I had a nice and smooth burrow, and there was also a tortoise in there. I scoped. Here is his butt. I tried to run deeper, but it couldn't run for me. And now it's time for some more mammal trapping. Hopefully we're more successful this time. Here's where I put one of my Sherman traps, and then here is the meso-mammal trap. And we're going to be putting it over by the water since we're baiting this one with sardines, hopefully to get an opossum. Also, look how pretty this area is, and especially at sunset, like it's just a nice place to chill after a really long day.
Right?
Wait, focus on the sunset.
So pretty.
Second one.
On our way back for the night, we went looking for some owls, and we were able to find this couple and one of their not so little babies. Like, dude was screaming like a little child, but like he was massive. Anyways, then it was our last day here, and this is the aftermath of the prescribed burn we saw earlier. Crazy to see how it looks now compared to before. And also, like, this area around the oaks are, like, untouched. That's just crazy. But it's that time again to check our traps. First with the little mammal traps. They were both a bust for me. I'm just not good. But all good, because 2 of the many traps we set up caught something, and it was alive. Let's go. So this is how you get them out of the trap. Also, this is a eastern wood rat. So eastern wood rats, they will build their nests out of sticks, and they'll store like bright, shiny objects also here. These guys can be distinguished from black and Norway rats from their large eyes, white feet, and their like furry tails. They can be found from central Florida all the way up to North Carolina and in some parts of Tennessee and even Kentucky. Their largest threats are habitat loss, fragmentation, and predation. There was a study done that found that when raccoon populations increased, wood rat populations would decrease, and it was thought to have been caused by the transference of the raccoon roundworm. And so we're just learning about how to handle and measure them. Okay, this here is a cotton mouse. These guys are a bit smaller than the wood rat we just saw. Their undersides are like dirty white with white feet, and they have a darker brown tail. They typically nest in trees or under logs. And here we are releasing it back where it was caught.
He's so cute. Oh, I'm gonna need those photos. Of him under the... My little guy.
And now it's time to check our meso-mammal traps. Again, mine was a bust, but one trap did catch an opossum, so yay.
What species do we have? Good. What do we know about possums? The only North American marsupial.
Basically impossible to get rabies.
This is that's actually a misnomer. It's not impossible.
I said basically.
Less probable than with raccoons and
That's
others.
really big cream.
with one another, and they're amazing healers. So even though, you know, she's got a little scratch, that thing's going to be gone maybe by the end of the day, right? It'll start scabbing up. Has anyone ever seen a possum track? What does it look like? Yeah, so remember raccoon tracks look like this, right? And possums have this wide thumb, which is really good for climbing. What about their tail?
It's naked.
Naked and prehensile. Yeah, so they have a prehensile tail, so they're able to wrap their tail around and use it as an extra appendage when they're climbing. People used to say that they hang upside down by the tail. That's more like a Halloween story than a real life. They just use it for climbing, but they do when they're making a nest. So they'll nest in hollow trees, and so we see on camera traps all the time that they're walking with their tail in the air, and they have a tail full of leaves that they carry up in the tree, and then they put it inside the nest and make a little bed in there. Front of the trap, it's good that she wants to go this way, so I can open this easily without distracting her. I'm just gonna wait until she sees that the trap is open, and easy as that, right?
And now we're at the point of the trip that is a little bittersweet, but after a long few days and getting closer to everyone, getting to know them, here we are on our last truck ride back to the bunkhouse, down the dirt roads, with dust flying everywhere, which I do not miss at all because it was constantly stuck to my face and in my eyes and ears and nose and you name it. It was just everywhere. But the final activity of the day was checking our camera traps. So I'm just going to show you some of the highlights from the other camera traps. So got a raccoon, a coyote, or coyote, how some people say it.
The raccoon and the coyote obviously responded to the bait, but in different ways. But it did do something, elicited a behavior.
Wait, was that a different one?
I don't know.
A bobcat. Somebody's dog.
Why is there a dog?
It looks like a pin.
I've been seeing that one a lot on cameras. I've seen it chasing me now.
A fox squirrel. A flying squirrel. Another raccoon. We got some sandhill cranes, a turkey, another coyote, and like some deer right after.
Deer. Looking for some cat food.
No, it was the little glowing thing was in front of the car.
Okay, and now for our camera trap. We started off with an eastern bluebird, then an armadillo way back there, and then we got an opossum.
Oh.
Yeah, interaction.
Is it a male?
He's hungry.
And another. And another.
But as you can see, they're not opposed to sardines.
So, were there two small ones? Or just one small one?
It's hard to tell, but
A raccoon. And then another possum. Needless to say, the opossums loved our camera trap and the sardines.
anything in the background?
Okay, opossum number 5-ish.
Let's just happy for it.
30 minutes later, it's back.
He's just climbing.
Oh, yeah, yes, okay. His tail looks pretty cool.
It looks darker.
What did they do, like, in between their, like, time for other stuff?
2 hours later, we got another.
Another possum. You guys have a good location. Oh, the sandhill.
Oh, and some sandhill cranes.
Two.
Oh yeah, 3.
There's one in the back. I keep writing a number and I'm like, there's another one. Yeah.
Just showing off. Okay, now the actual final thing was cleaning and sanitizing all the traps. So here's a time lapse of us doing that.
I got bells on my toes, a heart for a nose. I'm the grand prize of the carnival show. I'm all by myself, way up on the shelf, waiting for you to come along and give me some help. Take me home.
And now I'm back home, and I hope you enjoyed getting a look into like one of the coolest weeks of my life as a wildlife ecology student. But yeah, now I'm tired, so good night. Bye. Subscribe. Please subscribe.